Tampa Bay Times, Matt Baker, who's a writer for Tampa Bay Times, is a great writer. He covers Florida State, Florida, Miami, covers all of them. He lists every year the top games, ranks the games in order involving the FBS teams in the state of Florida. There are 78 of them amongst the 7 teams. But what's interesting to me is that the pathetic, horrible 3-6 Florida State Seminoles have 3 of the top 6 games. He's ranked the Florida State Notre Dame game as the 4th best game in the state this year, the Florida State Miami game at 5, and the Florida State Florida game is at 6, and then Florida State North Carolina at 11, Florida State Clemson at 14. We've talked about how great these games are. We talked about how tough this schedule is going to be. Logan, I'm going to give you the platform right now. I mean, that's should be something right there that you're saying that 5 of the top 14 games in the state this coming season involve Florida State. I mean, you agree, you disagree? Because let's give some credit. There are some other tough games. Obviously, the Florida-Alabama game was ranked number 1. The Florida-Georgia game was ranked number 2. The Miami-North Carolina game was ranked number 3. The Miami-Alabama game was ranked 7th. That one surprised me that wasn't ranked higher.
Once again, Jason, number 1
was Alabama-Florida. There's a lot of Florida fans who think they have a legitimate shot against Alabama.
I would say that Miami. So what's the criteria here? Like most important games?
No, just the best game. I guess
what is going to be the best game? That's not going to be the best game.
The top 78 games. So I could give that because I will say this.
Alabama's going to win that by 20 points. That is not going to be the best game.
I think Alabama does beat both Florida and Miami. I do think Florida gives Alabama a closer game for a couple of reasons. Number 1, it's in Gainesville. Number 2, I think Alabama's going to get a little beat up in the opener against Miami. I think Miami's going to play a little bit Miami ball, if you will. And I think Florida's going to be ready for it. Florida obviously has FAU and USF before, so those two should be 2 more warm-up games. So I think Florida has a closer game, so I think that's why it's a better game. But I think Alabama wins both. I think Alabama's the state champs in the state of Florida this season.
Mm-hmm.
But Logan, what do you think? Do you agree with Florida State having games ranked 4th, 5th, and 6th? Do you agree with that order? Do you think the Miami game is more important than the Notre Dame game? And just in general, do you think Alabama-Florida is the best game in the state of Florida this year?
I think the best game. I wonder if also it's like the entertainment value that he's going off of too. Florida State versus Notre Dame brings in one of the most highest ratings. I know probably Mark can comment on it too, but for some reason, and it makes sense, it's got a small little rivalry there, but 2 big time names going at it, and they've had historic games, and so that doesn't surprise me whatsoever. And you got finally Notre Dame coming back to Tallahassee, which you're looking at COVID-19. You're having a full packed stadium. Jason's going to be in the stands. I'll be there. James will be there.
Yep.
It will be back to normal. And that place in 2014 was unbelievably electric and wild, and ended up being ended in a good way for Florida State. But that didn't surprise me whatsoever for it to be up that high, because that storyline, I think, will be fantastic too going into it. You're on a Sunday night all by yourself too. There's no other college football game going on. You've got ton on Thursday. You've got them on Friday. You got them on Saturday. You only got one on Sunday and then one on Monday. It is one of the highlighted premiered games that weekend, and it's going to be absolutely insanity. So I definitely think that ranking is fine. And I think it's pretty fair too, at least in the competitive range. Right now we'll see when we predict the scores, but I think it's, as a competitive alignment along with entertainment value, it definitely fits in that top 5 range.
Yeah, and I agree. And like you talked about last year, Florida State was horrific, and the Notre Dame game brought in great numbers for all the NBC stations. So yeah, it was phenomenal for us last year. I will say this. I do agree with Florida State Notre Dame being the most important, best game, I guess, of the schedule. I would rate the Florida game higher than the Miami game, just because I think by that end of the year, we've talked about why I think Florida State has the best chance to beat Florida. And I've gone out and said I think Florida State does beat Florida this year. I think that alone, plus the fact that they didn't play last year, Florida and the SEC backed out of that game. That's why that game to me is a little bit more important to me. I'm a little bit surprised that the Clemson game was ranked below the North Carolina game. That one surprised me a little bit. I wonder if people are giving Florida State a little too much of a chance against North Carolina. That's that question. And then I do have a question for you, Logan, and a question for you. Logan. The Jacksonville State game was ranked 72nd. That's a game 6 days after the Notre Dame game. The UMass game was ranked 67th. So they think UMass is going to give Florida State a better game than Jacksonville State. Mind you, Jacksonville State is a team that was beating Florida State in the third quarter, midway through the third quarter last season. UMass is a team that scored 2 points against FAU. Dose points against FAU. I think we slaughter UMass, and I think Jacksonville State, I think we beat Jacksonville State convincingly, but I think that game will be a lot closer. So what do you think is the worst game on the schedule? Do you think it's UMass, Jacksonville State? What's our game that fans will be selling their tickets for Whataburger?
I'm a list guy. I love lists. So if you're going to list like the 100 greatest artists of all time or something like that, but that's a list in which if you look at 90 to 95, you're still looking at just quality artists that had huge followings. Music history is so long and elaborate that you can look that far down the list and you're still talking about legendary acts. When you're talking about the 78 best games in Florida involving Florida teams and you're talking about number 72 and does it really matter?
I think Jacksonville State gives us a better game than UMass.
I think it will. I'm going to the UMass game only because of the storyline of having Walt Bell back in Tallahassee. That's the biggest thing. That's my entertainment value. Florida State's going to handle its business, but UMass was god-awful, has been god-awful under Walt Bell. I think Norvell is levels ahead in the brain up there. And as a game planner and just overall, he's just a better coach, obviously. So I think mainly I'm just there for the storyline and having Walt Bell back in the stands. And it seemed like him. There's nothing really against Walt Bell. I don't think FSU fans really have any more. Maybe they did whenever he was there because the product wasn't so pretty, but it was more of him not having a great relationship with Willie Taggart, Jason's best friend. And, that is what, Florida State fans shouldn't be too mad at Walt Bell, but I think still there's going to be a few boos whenever he gets announced as a head coach coming in.
I'm going to answer Richard Bass real quick here. So Richard Bass.
Well, I have yet to chime in on the best Florida games here.
I sincerely apologize. You go ahead, then we will address Richard Bass. Go ahead.
Okay. So for me, my first question would be, do any of these three teams have a shot at a national championship or college football playoff? I don't believe that they do. So technically they do, yes. Obviously they do technically, but Florida and Miami, yes, they could have an unbelievable season and maybe. So therefore, my focus shifts to conference play because Miami's got a North Carolina game that probably will decide the division. Miami, North Carolina. Georgia's the best team in the SEC East. Florida's got a fighting chance. They beat them last year. They've got a puncher's chance, 15% chance in my estimation of winning that game and then taking over the control of the East. Therefore, to me, those are the two most important games on the schedule in Florida. And then for Florida State, I think it's the Notre Dame game because I don't think Florida State's equipped to win the conference yet. Therefore, like Logan and you both talked about, prime time, biggest audience, first game of the season, get off to a great start. Even if they don't win, play well, play close, show that you belong. Huge game for Florida State with a huge audience for the reasons that Logan cited. It's by itself. Anybody that wants to watch college football, it's the conclusion of the big college football weekend. That's going to have a huge audience, huge game for Florida State for the momentum for 21 and for recruiting. Enormous game for Florida State. But for Florida, it's Georgia. For Miami, it's North Carolina in my book.
To answer Richard Bass, if we go 8-4 or better this season, not only will I get a Mike Norvell fathead, it will go right here. Mike Norvell.
Oh, man. We got to remember this one.
Can we make custom ones?
Right here is where the Mike Norvell. So basically what he'll be doing is he'll be looking over me going, told you so. Told you so. Here's
Yeah.
my loyalty is to Florida State. I want Florida State to do well. My personal opinion about the coaching search and the way it happened, that's different. I want Florida State to do as well as possible, but we're not going 8-4 this season.